Iran is a nation where its leaders believe that their primary mission isn't governance or economics, but manufacturing the end of the world. Political leaders who do not want to pave roads as much as pave the way to Armageddon. Iran's clerical leaders, the mullahs, believe that they are the temporary placeholders for a missing messianic imam, a teacher who disappeared over 1,000 years ago. I'm not making this up. This is the official state ideology of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is why the mullahs and the Republican Guard will not relinquish power and why they do not fear confrontation with Israel and the United States. To the contrary, they relish in it. This all comes down to something called eschatology, which is the study of the end times according to different belief systems. Now, there are varieties of Christian eschatology, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Islamic, and even secular eschatologies. And they're diverse amongst themselves and they are diverse within each other. So, in this video, I'm going to give a short analysis of Shiite eschatology, looking at the radical prophecy and the apocalyptic vision driving one of the world's most brutal regimes. And I'll explain why they are literally trying to build the end of the world. To understand the Iranian regime, you've got to understand something of Shiite eschatology and the story of the hidden Imam. Now, Iran is overwhelmingly Muslim, but it follows the Shia rather than Sunni interpretation of Islam. Now, Shiite Islam is also diverse, but the main type of Shiite Islam is known as Twelver Shiism, where it is believed that there were 12 divinely chosen leaders or imams after the Prophet Muhammad. The 12th imam, a boy named Muhammad al-Mahdi, was born in the 9th century. Yet, fearing that he would be killed by his enemies, his followers claim that God put him into a state called occultation, which means he was hidden from the physical world by divine power. Now, this allegedly happened in two stages. First, a minor occultation, which lasted for 70 years, where the Mahdi remained in direct contact with the Shia community through 4 successive special deputies. Then a second major occultation, where the Mahdi stopped communicating and vanished completely until he returns at the end of the age. He is thus hidden and is this hidden imam whom the Shia wait to see revealed. Now, for 1100 years, Shiites have waited for the Mahdi's return. He's a messiah like figure who's expected to reappear in the end times to wipe out tyranny and to establish a world government based on absolute justice. Furthermore, in the Shiite scheme, their idea of the end of the world, Jesus is expected to return as well to assist the Mahdi. Jesus will allegedly descend at the white minaret on the eastern side of Damascus, and Jesus will acknowledge the Mahdi's leadership, and together they will raise an army against the Antichrist. And after Jesus and the Mahdi defeat the Antichrist, with Jesus personally executing him, together Jesus and the Mahdi will then face the invasion of Gog and Magog. Now, if you know your Christian and Hebrew Bible, they'll be very familiar. Following these apocalyptic battles, the Mahdi will then establish a global government characterized by infinite justice under Islamic law, Sharia law, and bring an end to oppression and tyranny. That's the scheme. That's the Shiite vision of the future, centered on the revelation, the coming of the hidden Mahdi. For centuries, the Shia have waited for the unveiling of the Mahdi and the return of Jesus. Now, the traditional Shiite view of what to do in the interim was pretty simple. The world is messed up, it's going to stay broken until the Mahdi is unveiled. So until then, focus on being a good Muslim. Read your Quran, pray hard, give alms to the poor, that kind of a thing. But then in the 1970s, a prominent Iranian religious leader, the Ayatollah Khameini, flipped that idea on its head. He argued that Shia Muslims shouldn't simply watch and wait for the return of the Mahdi. Instead, he claimed that Shiite clergy should take control of the government to prepare the way for the Mahdi's return. This view became the foundation of the 1979 Iranian Islamic Revolution. Khomeini introduced a concept called the guardianship of the jurist. This is where Shiite clerics function as, religious leaders, but also as lawyers and the civic powers. Under this system, the supreme leader isn't a secular president. He's way more than that. He's considered the official deputy or the placeholder for the hidden imam. Because he rules on behalf of the Mahdi, the hidden imam, his power is seen as absolute. And opposing him is like opposing the Mahdi or even God. That's the system that Khomeini introduced, and it radically changed Iran. Now, as you know, a lot of things happened in Iran in the 1980s, but after Khomeini passed away, a new Ayatollah was appointed, the Ayatollah Khameini, and he took the original vision of the Islamic Revolution even further. In 2019, he issued a manifesto called the Second Step of the Revolution. In it, Khomeini argues the Islamic Revolution isn't over, it's just entering a new phase of export and expansion. Khomeini's goal, he says, is to build a new Islamic civilization that serves as the final precursor to the end of the world. Khomeini sees this happening in 5 steps. First of all, you've got the initial revolution, what took place in 1979. Secondly, you've got the building of a Islamic government to replace the government of the Shah in Iran. Thirdly, you've got the purification of the state. Fourthly, transforming society. And then fifth and finally, exporting the revolution to truly pave the way for the Mahdi. This is why Iran focuses so much on self sufficiency and resisting Western influence. They believe that by surviving sanctions and building a powerful, independent state armed with nuclear weapons, they are proving that they are worthy of the Mahdi's return. The Iranian leadership views the world through the lens very much of the oppressor versus the arrogant powers of the West. And in their mind, the ultimate, the most evil powers are the United States and Israel. They are the very incarnation of the forces of Satan that the Mahdi is destined to destroy. And this is where they've created an axis of resistance. They have allies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen. And these are seen by some not simply as proxy forces per se, but a kind of vanguard for the army of the Mahdi. Now, if you take this whole scheme together, it's very interesting because it's got similarities to other eschatologies. I mean, the fact that there's a place for Jesus in Shiite eschatology and they're talking about an antichrist and Gog and Magog and other things, it does have some points of contact with Christian eschatology. Also, the Ayatollah's idea of dividing everyone into oppressor or oppressed, that fits snugly with Marxist ideology. Or even the idea of exporting the revolution and keeping it going, that's not too dissimilar from Trotsky's Marxist notion of a perpetual revolution. So there's a lot of interesting connections and intersections between Shiite eschatologies and other beliefs about the end of the world. So what does all this mean? It means if we look at Iran's actions on the world stage, their nuclear program, their proxy wars, their internal crackdowns, we aren't looking at a country playing Game of Thrones or engaging in some aggressive foreign policy. We are looking at a regime that believes it is writing the final chapter of human history. For the Ayatollahs, the survival of the Iranian state is sacred because they believe it is the only gateway to the apocalypse, the end of the world. Now, whether you see this as true religious convictions or simply a political tool for control, one thing is certain. In Tehran, Armageddon, the end of the world, a final battle against the forces of evil, isn't something they fear. It's something they are trying to actively construct.